The first thing I remember is the sound of a flatline, that long, terrible beep that never stops, like a scream trapped in metal, and then jolt, my body flying off the bed, my muscles seizing as electricity ripped through my chest, and for a second, I thought I was gone, that this was it, that I'd finally slipped into the quiet after all the years of worry, all the sleepless nights raising 2 kids alone after Frank passed, all the double shifts at the school cafeteria just so Melissa and Jason could go to college without debt. But then I gasped, a raw, broken sound, and I was back, blinking up at the fluorescent lights, my mouth dry as sandpaper, my chest burning like it had been split open and stapled shut, and I tried to speak, to ask where my children were, but all that came out was a whisper, and then a nurse leaned over me, gentle, her name tag saying Marcus, and he said, "You're safe, Mrs. Davis. Just rest now." But the words safe didn't make sense, because I wasn't safe. I was alone, completely alone, and later that night, when the ward quieted and I thought I was asleep, I heard him on the phone, speaking softly. "Yes, ma'am. She's stabilized. She's awake now. Would you like to speak to her?" And then a pause, and I held my breath, waiting, hoping, praying that my daughter would say yes, that she'd finally come, but instead, I heard her voice, cold and distant. "No, I don't think that's necessary right now." And just like that, my heart broke all over again, because I realized in that moment, they knew I was alive, and they chose not to answer. They chose to leave me in that hospital bed with strangers while they sipped cocktails under the Caribbean sun, and I lay there, tears burning behind my eyelids, not from pain, but from the crushing weight of betrayal, because I had given everything, my youth, my dreams, my health, to raise them, to protect them, to make sure they never wanted for anything, and now, when I needed them most, they treated me like a burden, like an inconvenience, like someone they could just walk away from, and when I was finally discharged 9 days later, no family came to sign me out, just a hospital volunteer, with a clipboard and a kind smile, and as I got into the van, I stared out the window at the city passing by, wondering if my house would still feel like home, but when the van pulled up, my stomach dropped, the curtains were different, the porch chairs were gone, the little ceramic frog by the steps where I always hid the spare key, empty, and after knocking for 15 minutes, Ryan, my son-in-law, opened the door like he'd been caught doing something wrong, and he said, "Oh, Mrs. Davis, you're home sooner than we thought," and I didn't answer. I just walked past him, each step heavier than the last, and the living room, it wasn't mine anymore, the furniture rearranged, the walls half-painted in some trendy gray I would never choose, my wedding photos shoved into a cardboard box like they were trash, and on the dining table, a glossy real estate flyer that made my blood run cold. Charming southern home, ideal for young families, perfect starter house, and underneath, in bold letters, the price, and I just stood there, staring, my hands trembling because this wasn't a mistake. This was planned. This was premeditated. They had already started selling my home while I was still fighting to breathe, and then I saw it. The manila folder on the counter, open, filled with legal documents, and at the bottom, my signature on a power of attorney I'd signed 3 years ago during hip surgery. When I was groggy, when Melissa leaned over me and said, "It's just insurance. Paperwork, Mom, nothing serious," and I signed without reading, trusting my own daughter, and now that signature was being used to erase me completely, to take everything I'd built, and I grabbed Jason's old iPad from the pantry, hoping for answers, and what I found shattered me. Message after message, careless and cold, Melissa texting Ryan, "Once Mom's house sells, we'll finally have breathing room." Jason replying, "Yeah, assisted living is lined up. No more boundaries. About time." And I just sat down, my legs giving out, because this wasn't about money. It was about freedom. Freedom from me, from the woman who worked double shifts after their father died, who loaned them money when Ryan's business collapsed, who never missed a school play or a birthday, who believed that family meant forever. And now they were getting rid of me like an old couch, and I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't beg. I went quiet, the kind of quiet that comes before a storm, because I knew then that I wasn't just being neglected. I was being replaced, and so I made a decision. I wouldn't fight them. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't give them the drama they probably expected. I would disappear, quietly, completely, and rebuild a life where I wasn't a burden, where I was just me. And that night, I sat at the kitchen table under a single dim bulb, staring at that flyer like it was a death notice. And I remembered Daniel Ruiz, one of my English students from years ago, a shy boy who loved poetry, who once wrote a poem about second chances. And now he was a lawyer, small firm in San Antonio, and I called him, my voice shaking. And when he answered, I said, "Daniel, this is Eleanor Davis. Do you remember me?" And he said, warm and kind, "Mrs. Davis? Of course. You taught me to write." And I told him everything, the POA, the flyer, the messages, the hospital, the silence, and he listened, no interruptions, no disbelief. And when I finished, he said, "They overreached. That POA doesn't authorize real estate transfers. They can't sell your home. Not legally." And relief flooded me so fast I nearly passed out because for the first time in weeks, I felt solid ground under my feet, and Daniel filed a petition the same day to rescind the POA and restore my full control. And within 3 days, the court ruled in my favor, but I wasn't staying. I knew that now, because staying meant waiting to be cornered again, waiting for them to find another way to push me out. So I relisted the house under my name, cash buyer only, no contingencies. And within 11 days, it sold, and I stood in the empty living room on a folding chair, eating a peanut butter sandwich off a paper plate, and whispered to the walls, "This is the last time." And the next morning, I went to the bank, closed every joint account they'd ever touched, drained the balances, and opened new ones under a new name. Norah Williams, my grandmother's maiden name, a variation that felt like slipping into a coat that fit just right, and I packed only what mattered. My husband's old watch, a bundle of photographs, a box of childhood drawings Melissa and Jason made when they still loved me, and left behind everything else. Furniture, dishes, curtains, all of it junk now. Scraps of a life that had been stolen from me long before I walked out, and before I left, I wrote 2 short notes, one for each child, no accusations, no pleas, just 10 words. "Thank you for teaching me who you really are." And I left them on the kitchen counter next to the realtor's business card, and at sunrise, I slipped my belongings into the trunk of my dusty Corolla, no GPS, no plan, just the open road ahead, and I drove north through Texas, Oklahoma, into Arkansas, until I reached a tiny town so small it barely had a name, Fairhaven, population 5,800, where the sign said, "A place to rest," and I took it as permission. Paid cash for a trailer behind a hardware store. Landlord asked only 2 questions. "Do you smoke? Cash or check?" I said, "No," and cash. And that was enough. And that night, lying on a thin mattress with my boxes stacked like barricades, I listened to the crickets outside and waited for the fear to come. But instead, I felt something I hadn't in years, relief. Because for the first time since my heart stopped, I could breathe without wondering who was waiting to bury me, and in Fairhaven, I became Norah Williams, retired librarian from Roanoke, widowed, childless, looking for peace, a story simple, enough to remember, and in a town that small, no one asked too many questions, and I started volunteering at the library, shelving books, repairing bindings, the smell of paper and dust feeling more like home than my own house ever did, and soon the staff smiled when they saw me, and kids wandered over because I remembered their names, and that's how I met Claire, who worked nights at the diner, tired eyes, quick laugh, and her son Ethan, 8 years old, clutching dog-eared comic books, and the first time he called me Grandma Nora, my throat tightened, but I didn't correct him, because in that moment I realized I wasn't just surviving, I was healing, and days turned into rhythm. Mornings at the library, afternoons helping Ethan with homework, evenings sharing coffee with Claire, and when a birthday video of us went viral, just 30 seconds of Ethan unwrapping a toy while I helped him read the card. And someone matched my face to news clippings from San Antonio with the caption, "Found her. Grandma Ghost is alive in Fairhaven. She changed her name. She's building a new family." I knew it was over, that my silence was broken. And within days, the video had millions of views, comments pouring in, some calling me a villain, others calling me a legend. And then I saw it, a silver Toyota with Texas plates, circling the library parking lot. And when Melissa stepped out, jeans, cardigan, coffee cup in hand, She looked older, smaller, like shame had eaten her alive. And when our eyes met, I didn't run, I didn't hide. I walked outside, hands shaking but shoulders straight, and when she whispered, "Mom," I looked her dead in the eye and said, "I already held my funeral. You just weren't there." And her face crumpled, tears falling. We didn't know how bad it was, and I laughed, loud and bitter. "You left me alone in a hospital bed. You tried to sell my house while I was still breathing. Don't you dare say you didn't know." And when Jason came later with a letter, my own dying wish from the ICU scribbled with his apology, I told him, "I didn't need you to be strong. I needed you to show up." And when he begged to try again, I shook my head and said, "That part of me is already buried." And this time, I chose the funeral, because I've learned that family isn't about blood. It's about who answers when you call, who stays when you're weak, who loves you not for what you can give, but for who you are. And if this story has touched you, if you've ever been made to feel invisible by the people you raised, then please, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more real stories of courage, survival, and quiet revenge, and comment below. Where are you watching from? And have you ever had to walk away to save yourself? Because your story matters, and someone out there might just find the strength to leave because of you.